Hello there and welcome to a brand new season of Tigers Pregame here on MUTV 23. I'm your host, Brendan Lavell, and joining me today will be three guest analysts, the first of whom is sitting right here beside me, the one, the only, TJ McLaughlin. You ready to talk about some college football, TJ?
I'm ready. It's good to be here.
We have a busy week coming up in the SEC, lots to talk about, so let's jump right into things. TJ, the Tigers kicked off their season with a 26-11 loss at West Virginia last week, and obviously a lot of things went wrong. But what did the Tigers do well?
I think there were three big positives to take out of last week's performance. First thing, the run game, it was promising. I mean, it was nothing spectacular, but it was promising. Senior Alex Ross, Oklahoma transfer, he rushed 18 times, 67 yards. That works out to about a 3.7 yard average.
Right. Not too bad, not great, but.
But I think what this running game needs is they need to get these 3-4 yards. I mean, Drew Lock threw the ball 53 times.
Right.
So what needs to happen is there needs to be, these 3-4 yard gains, and I think the running game did that. Another thing, the quarterbacks rushed the ball pretty well too. Drew Lock, 9 rushes, 29 yards. If he can mix that up, with those 53 passes, I think we're in good shape. Just some positive yardage when he needs to get out of the pocket.
Right.
The next thing, the receiving core, they were fantastic. Jamon Moore, 8 receptions, 104 yards.
Wow. You didn't get much of that out of him last year. It was a big step up for Jamon Moore.
There were definitely some flashes of that, but it wasn't there on a consistent basis, so that was big. And then Chris Black, senior, haven't heard much from him, haven't seen much.
He transferred in from Alabama, actually, this offseason, so that was a big pickup for the Tigers.
Yeah, again, 6 receptions, 102 yards.
Yeah, big days for two Tigers wide receivers there. That'll happen a lot, when you have to throw the ball as often as Drew Lock did, but promising nonetheless.
Exactly.
All right, so now that we touched on the good, I do want to ask you, what exactly did go wrong for Mizzou last week? And I know there were a lot of things, but what do you want to talk about?
I think the big thing is the defense. The defense needs to be better. The Missouri defense has kept this team in games. Mizzou's success has been determined by this defense and how they play. So, tackle, machine, Kentrell Brothers, we lost him, NFL, but, the next 5 leading tacklers for this team are back. It needs to be there. The defensive line is good. They're all returning. Charles Harris, incredible. And, he needs to be a leader for this team. He needs to get that defensive line working cohesively, and they need to be able to stop the run.
Yeah, that defense is absolutely something that I'm sure most Tiger fans were counting on going into that West Virginia game. They didn't know what they'd get out of their offense, but they definitely thought that they'd hold West Virginia to, less than they did. But West Virginia does have it's a Big 12 offense, but a conference that's known for their offense. So, maybe a lot of Tigers fans just underestimated West Virginia. But I'm sure that, Barry Odom and the Tigers will be looking for better from their defense in the next few games. So next thing I want to ask you, is there a certain player on the Tigers that you think needs to step up this coming week?
I think Drew Lock. He's young. He's a sophomore. He's a true freshman last year. But, the consistency really needs to be there. 18 of 53. It needs to be better, and I think he's making smart decisions. You can see the maturity. 1 touchdown, no interceptions. That's big, but the consistency, if you're going to throw the ball 53 times, you really have to be more efficient, and you have to use that wide receiving core. We see they can do big things. So, he needs to step it up.
Yeah, Drew Lock, definitely a player that does need to step up. The offense is really counting on him this year. Really does hinge on him in general. And, having a great QB is so important to success, and especially in a conference with an SEC with such great defenses. We touched on the running game earlier. I know you touched on that they need to be able to get those 3-4 yard gains. If Drew Lock can start, completing more passes, and his completion percentage was really low this week, as you mentioned, if he can start completing more passes, we might see those running lanes start to open up a little bit, and might see Alex Ross and Ish Witter have some room to move around out there.
I think so. I mean, if you get that balance, if you can get Drew Lock to be a little bit more consistent, and you get these running backs doing what they did last week, I think this offense could, they're not going to be a great offense, but I think they can be average. They can be slightly above average. So I'm looking to see that this week.
Most definitely. Lastly, I want to ask you, what does Mizzou need to focus on this week to secure a win against Eastern Michigan?
They need to play to their strengths. Like I said, their defense, very good. Charles Harris needs to lead that offensive line. Shaq Van, Ian Erickson of Eastern Michigan, 253 yards last week. This will be a big test for Mizzou. Can that D-line hold the run? I think if the defense plays well, they got a good chance to really win big.
Yeah, it probably will come down to the defense. That's definitely what Mizzou's counting on. Maybe it won't be a problem as much against Eastern Michigan this week, but it'd be nice to see a good showing against a bad team like Eastern Michigan, so that in the future we know that maybe or the Mizzou fans know that they can count on them against the SEC opponents like Georgia. TJ McLaughlin, thank you so much for coming on the show. When we come back, I'll be chatting with Ethan Illers about Mizzou's opponent, the Eastern Michigan Eagles. Stay tuned. Welcome back to MUTV's 23's coverage of Mizzou's Week 2 matchup against Eastern Michigan. Here to give us the inside scoop on the Eagles is the always reliable Ethan Illers. I know I'm excited for this. You excited to be here, Ethan?
I am back in the MUTV groove, Brendan. It's good to be back. Good to talk some Mizzou football.
Always a pleasure to have you, Ethan. So first off, tell us about the season Eastern Michigan had last year.
Well, Brendan, last year was one to forget for the Eastern Michigan Eagles. The Eagles went 0-6 in front of their home crowd. They only won one game out of 12 contests, finishing 1-11. They went 0-8 in conference play, and their only win came at Wyoming on the road by a final score of 48-29. It was a horrible season for the Eagles, one they would forget, especially for the seniors. And for the seniors, Brendan, their greatest memory probably was, in the words of Dennis Clifford, going out to eat.
Yeah, it's not a great season when, the best memory you have is eating in the continental breakfast in the hotel before game day. Definitely not the best year for the Eagles. But did they start 2016 off on the right foot?
They did start 2016 on the right foot, Brendan. They defeated Mississippi Valley State. Yes, that's a school. Mississippi Valley State 61-14. Quarterback Todd Porter, who had a great game, throwing for 171 yards, completing 15 out of 22 passes. 3 of them resulted in a touchdown. He did throw 1 interception, but still, you cannot complain if you're Todd Porter or Eastern Michigan. Clobbered Mississippi Valley State 61-14. Clearly getting off to a good start there, Brendan.
Yeah, a win is a win, Ethan. But when it's against Mississippi Valley State,
Asterisks.
A little bit of an asterisk, maybe. They are an FCS opponent, but they needed a win. They had one last year. They already got one this year, so definitely a plus. Much needed win for the program. So if the Eagles are going to keep winning, what will their biggest strength be?
Well, their biggest strength is that they have this great ball discipline. They don't commit turnovers, and they often score early. They scored 21 points last game in the first quarter, let alone. Of course, going on to a 61-14 win, but still, scoring early is a huge key for the Eastern Michigan Eagles, and they proved that they can do it.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about their strengths. What might hold Eastern Michigan back this year?
Well, overall, it's the SEC. They have no wins all time against the SEC, and also there's not too many weaknesses here, but the second half, they do not play well in the second half at all, Brendan, because Eastern Michigan last year fell to LSU by a final score. I mean, they just got blown out. I don't have the final score in front of me, but they got blown out. But here's the big picture, too. Halftime, Eastern Michigan only trailed LSU by 8 points. So clearly, the second half defense is going to play a big role here for these Eastern Michigan Eagles if they want to get the job done.
Yeah, second half defense, always important if you want to finish out a game. Going forward this season, who will be the key player for this football team?
3 players for you right now, Brendan. I have running back Shaq. I have running back. The running back last name by Shaq. I don't know why I don't have his first name in front of me. That's a mistake I made. But anyway, Shaq rushed for 156 yards on 20 attempts, and he only scored he scored 2 touchdowns. Right? Not only scored 2 touchdowns, but he did score 2 touchdowns. Great game overall by the running back. Shaq, defensive end Pat O'Connor, who missed last year because of an injury. The redshirt senior from Chicago returned with a force as he was named captain and named second-team preseason All-MAC. 2 sacks and 6 tackles from last game. And also the quarterback, Todd Porter, like I mentioned before, I gave you his stats, 171 yards, 15 out of 22 passes, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Those 3 players are going to have to step up big time, Brendan.
I just want to let the confused viewers at home know that
Shaquille O'Neal
is not lining up in the backfield for the Eastern Michigan Eagles.
What a sight that would be, though.
But apparently this Shaq is to be feared as well. So Mizzou beware. And finally, what will be the key matchup for the Eagles' battle against Mizzou?
I guarantee you probably no one thought of this right now, Brent, but I'm going to go. It's going to come down to a battle of the tight ends right here. I'm going to go with the tight end from Eastern Michigan, Nigel Kilby. I have his name in front of me, actually. Nigel Kilby, freshman, 67 reception yards in his last game. He caught 4 passes and a touchdown. This kid is only a freshman, but he's at 6'7", 239 pounds. And, of course, Mizzou, who could forget Sean Colkin, the redshirt senior from Florida. He only had 2 catches for 27 yards, but the guy stands at 6'6", 250 pounds. I envision him probably having a big game on Saturday against Eastern Michigan, which is tomorrow. I envision him having a big game against Eastern Michigan. However, or also if the receivers cannot step up, or if the receivers are covered pretty well. So I expect Sean Colkin to step up. Nigel Kilby, I expect to be a big target for Eastern Michigan. Overall, it's going to come down to the battle of the tight ends, I think, Brendan.
Should be an interesting battle between the tight ends for sure. I know TJ touched earlier about how the wideouts stepped up against West Virginia, but you didn't really see much of Sean Colkin against West Virginia, as you mentioned. It seemed like last year, too, that when the Tigers would maybe win a game, that Sean Colkin would have a big game, but in a lot of the losses, Sean Colkin was nowhere to be found. So definitely a guy that Mizzou is looking forward to stepping up, especially with Drew Lock needing to step up, especially with Drew Lock, being a new starter. This is his first time, starting for an entire year, being an opening day starter. Mizzou definitely needs Sean Colkin. All right, Ethan, always a pleasure having you on air. Coming up, we'll have the final segment of this week's MUTV 23 kickoff show, where Brian Consiglio will take us around the SEC for his Week 2 predictions. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to MUTV's Week 2 college football coverage. It's the final segment, and joining me is SEC expert Brian Consiglio. Did you bring your crystal ball, maybe your magic 8-ball for this segment, Brian?
I did, that's right. I'm ready to go.
All righty then. Let's start off with an all-conference matchup at the Swamp. It's Florida, it's Kentucky. Who do you have taking this one?
Well, I'm going with Florida. When you compare these two defenses, Kentucky gave up 44 points against Southern Miss last week and ended up losing that game. Didn't score a single point in the second half. You compare that with Florida, only gave up 7 points to UMass in their home opener. I'm taking the Gators at home.
Yeah, I think definitely the Gators would be the best pick here, especially considering the Swamp. That's just a tough place to come in and play. A team like Kentucky, I'm just not sure that they'll be able to keep their composure, with 100,000 screaming fans at Ben Griffin Stadium. Moving on to Arkansas State, they'll travel to Auburn to take on the Tigers this week. Who are you going to be rolling with in that one?
I'm going to go with Auburn, but reluctantly. I watched their game against Clemson last week. It did not look good, especially at the quarterback play. Sean Hill, Jeremy Johnson, neither one of them really knew. It seemed like the coach didn't really know which one to start. He kept on switching out quarterbacks. I'm going to go with Auburn, though, because of Kerryon Johnson. I think they're going to focus more on the running game this week, and I think they'll win in the trenches. Arkansas State's going to have a hard time keeping up with the physicality of that Auburn line.
Yeah, most definitely. And even though Auburn's offense didn't look that good this week, they were playing Clemson, and they only lost by 6 points. Their defense played a pretty good game. I'd say Auburn is definitely a pretty good pick here at home against Arkansas State. Next, we have Middle Tennessee playing the Vanderbilt Commodores. That game is in Nashville. Who do you think is going to win that one?
All right, this is my first upset pick. I'm going with Middle Tennessee State, the Blue Raiders. That's right. Look out for quarterback Brent Stockstill. He's a great quarterback. I think he's going to have a great time, with that spread option that they got going at Middle Tennessee State. I think that high-powered offense is going to be too much for Vanderbilt.
All right, that's a bold pick, but I like it. I'm going to go with Middle Tennessee as well. Vanderbilt played in their first game against the laughingstock in SEC last year in South Carolina. Still couldn't pull off the win. So I think Middle Tennessee is a pretty good pick there. Now another all-conference matchup. The South Carolina Gamecocks in Starksville against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. This is a huge game for both teams, in my opinion. Who do you think is going to win this one?
I'm going with the road team again. I'm going with the Gamecocks. New head coach Will Muschamp used to be the head coach at Florida. They committed a lot of penalties against Vanderbilt last week and were still able to squeak out a victory. I think they'll go in and handle the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, who are still adjusting to life after Dak Prescott.
I'm actually going to disagree with you for the first time on this one. I'm going to go with Mississippi State. I think that South Carolina capitalized on a weak Vanderbilt team, and I think that even though Mississippi State lost an embarrassing game at home to South Alabama last week, I think they come out angry, looking for a win, and I think they win a tight one against South Carolina. Next on the slate, we have number 17, Tennessee, and Virginia Tech. Did you know this game is being played in a race car stadium?
I did not know that.
It's being played in a NASCAR stadium. Bristol Motor Speedway is being converted into a football field.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of fans in that stadium.
Most likely. Two classic programs playing each other at a neutral site. Who do you think is going to win this one?
All right, I also got Tennessee on upset alert this weekend. I'm going with Virginia Tech quarterback Gerard Evans. He's a great athlete, dual threat, can run, can throw. If you haven't heard of him, I think Saturday night could be his coming out party in primetime.
I have to go with Tennessee. I think it's a very, very even matchup. Tennessee did not look that good this week. They were a preseason darling along a lot of national media members, but they tend to be overrated just about every year. It seems like they're always a little bit higher ranked than they end up being. Tight game for Tennessee last week, but I do think that Dobbs is going to come out strong in this one, and I do think that they're going to beat Tech. Maybe if it were at Lane Stadium, I'd go with the Hokies, but I think the Volunteers win a tight one in this one. Now for the game that most of our audience has been waiting for, Eastern Michigan coming to the Zoo to play the Missouri Tigers. What do you think about this one?
I'm going with the Tigers. I think they're going to bounce back after that loss at West Virginia. I think they're going to dominate in the trenches. Both the offensive line and the defensive line is going to be overpowering Eastern Michigan. Look for Drew Lock to be hooking up with his main target, Jamal Moore.
Yeah, I have to agree on this one. And I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I think it's going to be a 2 or 3 score game. I think that Drew Lock's going to improve on the chemistry that he found with some of his receivers last week, like you said, Jamon Moore. I think the defense is a bounce-back game, and I think that they bounce all over an inferior opponent in Eastern Michigan. And finally, my all-important game of the week. Number 15, TCU Horned Frogs, playing host to the Arkansas Razorbacks. Who do you have in this one?
Well, I'm definitely going to be looking forward to this one. I'm going with TCU. I think these two teams are very contrasting styles. Arkansas, big, physical. I think their offensive line is so big that there's only 4 teams in the NFL that are bigger than Arkansas's offensive line. I'm going with TCU, though, because of that explosive offense. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, and anytime there's a shootout, you got to go with the Frogs, TCU.
Yeah, I think TCU is going to be too tough to beat at home. I think that they're, like you said, offense is going to have a big day. Arkansas defense is going to do their best to slow them down. But I don't think the Arkansas offense can keep up with TCU's. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a wrap for today. But it's only the beginning of what's going to be an amazing year at MUTV Sports. Starting this Tuesday at 7 o'clock, we have Tailgaters, and then at 8 o'clock, TW23. So be sure to tune in for that one. Going to be great. And then also making its season premiere on Thursday, Triple Play, your favorite game show, is going to be on at 5:30. As always, be sure to follow MUTV Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff for your Mizzou Sports updates. Also, you can find full episodes of all our shows and read about all the Mizzou sporting events on mutv.missouri.edu. We even have a great streaming service here at MUTV, so make sure to check out mutvstream.missouri.edu for all the movie-watching fun that your heart desires. So, for TJ McLaughlin, Ethan Illers, Brian Consiglio, and everyone here at MUTV, I'm Brendan Lavell.